Goldfish and Chrysanthemums by Andrea Chang, illustrated by Michelle Chang. Nini, Grandma, Baba, Dad, Suzhou, a city in eastern China. Grandma Nini was in the kitchen, cutting carrots into flower shapes. I stood next to her, washing the rice. When Nini first came to live with us, she showed me how to pour cold water on the rice, swirl the rice around with my hand, and pour off the extra water. Nini smiled. "You are a very good cook, Nancy," she said. At that moment, my brother, Greg, came in with the mail. He handed Nini a thin blue envelope. "From my brother in China," Nini said, opening the envelope carefully so I could have the stamp. Two photographs fell onto the counter. One was of an old house with the courtyard in the middle. In the other, only half the house was standing, and the workmen were carting away old bricks and wood. Nini scanned the letter quickly. "Brother says the city needs space for apartment building, so they tear down our father's old house in Suzhou," Nini said softly. She held the photos to the light from the window. "Baba had a fish pond in the middle," she said, pointing to the courtyard. "All day I follow him, help him pinch the buds and feed the fish." Nini's voice cracked. She put down the pictures and went back to her carrot flowers. One broke, and she turned it into two carrotfish. We watched Nini for a few moments. Then Greg asked if we could go to the summer fair in the schoolyard with his friend Nathan. Nini nodded and gave us each a few dollars to spend. At the fair, Greg and Nathan ran right to the rides. I wandered around by myself, trying to decide how to spend my money. I wanted to get something to cheer up Nini, but all I saw was plastic jewelry and toys. I walked on and came to a booth with rows and rows of fish bowls and a sign that said, "Win a goldfish." I decided to try and win one for Nini. When it was my turn, I took a ball and aimed carefully for the back corner. The ball landed in a bowl and I won a fish. I threw again and won a second time. The lady at the booth congratulated me and gave me a bowl with two fish. When it was time to leave, I followed Greg and Nathan down the street, walking slowly so the water wouldn't slosh out of the goldfish bowl. At home, Nini was upstairs writing a letter. The paper was filled with Chinese characters. "I won two goldfish," I said, showing Nini the bowl. "Were your Baba's fish like these?" "Very pretty," Nini said, looking at the fish swimming back and forth. "Baba's the same, only bigger. And all around the pond, big flowers, yellow ones. Don't know the name in English." I looked out the window at the yellow and red flowers in our neighbor Mrs. Zelinsky's garden. "Chrysanthemums?" I asked. Nini looked up. "Maybe," she said. "How do you say chrysanthemums?" I repeated slowly. Chrysanthemums, Nini said. Garden had a stone path, a bench too. Baba won prizes for his fish and flowers. So beautiful. Then she turned back to her letter. I went out to the backyard. Underneath our big honeysuckle bush was a puddle where the rain had pooled. Suddenly, I had an idea. This would be the perfect place for a fish pond. I waited and waited for Mom and Dad to come home. When I heard the car, I ran out to meet them. "Can I dig a fish pond underneath the honeysuckle bush for our new goldfish?" I asked. "Goldfish? Where did you get goldfish?" Dad asked. "At the fair in the schoolyard," I said. "I won them, and I want to make a pond for Nini." Mom looked surprised. "Why?" "Because her brothers said they're tearing down their Baba's house in Suzhou, the one with the pond and garden and everything." Mom looked at Dad, and he nodded. Then Mom took my hand. "A fish pond is a good idea," she said softly. The next morning, I woke up early. After breakfast, I ran to the garage and grabbed the shovel. Then I started to dig under the honeysuckle bush. The top layer of soil was easy to lift, but underneath was heavy clay. When I got out most of the clay, I discovered a big root right in the middle of the hole. I pushed the shovel under the root, but no matter how hard I leaned on the handle, I couldn't get it out. "Quite a project, Nancy," said Mrs. Zelinsky, walking over. "What are you planting?" "I'm making a fish pond," I said. "Looks like you've got a stubborn root there," Mrs. Zelinsky said. "Maybe I can help." We pushed on the shovel together, and finally the root came flying out of the ground. I dragged over the hose and turned on the water. For a few minutes, the pond looked just right, but then the water started seeping into the ground. I refilled the hole, but the water would not stay. I have one of those big old glazed flower pots in my garage, Mrs. Zelinsky said. I think it would be perfect for your pond. Are you sure you don't need it? I asked. Mrs. Zelinsky said she was sure. We carried the pot to my backyard, and I began to dig the hole deeper. By noon, the pot fit perfectly. Then came the test. I filled the pot with water and counted to 100. The water was still there. I cleared away some of the dirt and then went inside to wash my hands. What you do out there so long, Nancy? Nini asked. I tried not to smile. Just playing, I said, and I ran back outside. Hey, Nancy, what are you doing? Greg asked. He'd been playing ball all morning and had just gotten home. Testing my goldfish pond, I said. Are you really going to put your fish in it? Remember Nini told us about her Baba's fish pond in Soju? I said. I'm making a fish pond here for Nini. Do you want to help me fix it up? Sure, Greg replied. After lunch, we hunted for stones to make the path. Greg pulled out the old picnic bench from the garage and put it next to the pond. We heard the back door open, and Nini headed out to see what we were doing. Don't look, Nini, I shouted. It's a surprise. I covered my eyes. Don't see anything, Nini said, putting her hands over her eyes and heading back into the house. I remembered the chrysanthemums in Mrs. Zelensky's garden. I ran next door and asked if she had any extras. Help yourself, she said. Just dig them up from the back. They spread there every year. I thanked Mrs. Zelensky. Then Greg and I dug up a few clumps, careful to get all the roots, and we planted them around the pond. I think it's time for the fish, Greg said. I ran around the front of the house so Nini wouldn't see me get the fishbowl. I carried it carefully to the pond. At the count of 3, I poured the fish gently into their new home. At first, they were stunned, but after a few seconds, the fish began swimming every which way. Nini was in the kitchen slicing green onions into slivers. The surprise is ready, I said. Close your eyes. Nini dried her hands, and Greg and I led her to the backyard. Now you can open your eyes. Nini blinked for a minute in the bright sun. Then she smiled. So beautiful, she said, squeezing her hands. So very beautiful. She saw the flowers and bent down to smell the leaves. What did we call them? Nini asked. Then it came to her. Chrysanthemums, she exclaimed, and we could see tears in her eyes. We watched the fish for a long time. We can take pictures, Nini finally said. Send to my brother in China. Cheer him up. He can see here we have new pond, baby goldfish, and flowers. We call it Baba's Garden in America. Greg went to get the camera. Mrs. Zelinsky took a picture of the 3 of us on the bench with the pond in front. I took a picture of Nini smelling the chrysanthemum leaves. When Mom and Dad came home from work, Nini told them all about the new garden. Has 2 baby goldfish, she said, smiling. After dinner, we can see. Nini had made 6 different dishes for dinner. Everything looked so pretty, especially the asparagus with carrot flowers. Then I saw a carrot fish had landed in my bowl. Greg found one too. I looked up at Nini, and I knew she had placed them there, especially for us.